So we finally got a response to the tariff war from the Mango Mussolini yesterday, and it just made Canadians even more angry. And I quote here, Canada wants the benefits of being a state without being one. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. That's 3 exclamation marks. Why is it always 3 in what he does? It's crazy. There he is, dropping the language of Canada becoming the 51st state again. And it's always there, right? This is the thought process of a narcissist that believes everything belongs to him.
So let's get one thing straight right off the top. Canada will never be the 51st state. No matter what Trump wants or says, Canadians have no appetite for it at all. And I think Prime Minister Carney showed that by doing the right thing and walking away from the trade deal on the weekend, that he did what most U.S. states don't have the balls to do, stand up to Trump.
Yeah, Prime Minister Carney looked at those 50% tariffs on $28 billion of our stuff and at the last-minute demands that they tried to staple to that deal and said, no thanks, not happening. And looking at what Trump, Lutnick, and Greer wanted to stuff in there at the last minute, you can understand why Prime Minister Carney was never going to capitulate over any of those.
If you've been watching us this week, you know the pattern. Prime Minister Carney hits back, Canada holds the line, and Washington discovers its leverage was imaginary. So today, we're connecting the dots that Trump doesn't want you to connect. This is not about milk tariffs. This is about why a thriving country does not volunteer for a downgrade.
Now, let's start by talking about what happened on Sunday morning, because it really borders on the absurd. Sean Duffy, Trump's Secretary of Transportation, a real expert on trade, right, goes on Fox News and says Prime Minister Carney will, quote, come to the table because tariffs will be devastating for his country. Then he adds, and I'm quoting also here, to think Canada is going to war with Donald Trump and actually win that war with the U.S., I think it's foolish on their part. Right. So let me get this straight. The pitch is join us voluntarily or we'll hurt you until you do. That doesn't fly here in Canada.
And he then just kept on talking, which was the real gift to us. Duffy told Fox that Canada, and I quote here, doesn't have a military, that we have record-high euthanasia rates and a failing healthcare system that freeloads off American security. Come on! The Transportation Secretary doing foreign policy, doing military analysis, doing healthcare policy, all in 30 seconds on Fox dumbass news? Well, you almost have to admire his attempt at range.
Well, here's a little fact check for you here, Sean. Canada does have a military. We are in NATO. We run NORAD with you. We just committed billions to the Arctic and to Latvia. We also fought beside you in Afghanistan. Remember that? The war you started? And then, that healthcare line, that one is really rich. America spends more per person than anyone on Earth and still has people crowdfunding insulin. Sure. Listen, Canada has problems. Yes, every single system does. But we don't build a system where you lose your house because you got sick.
Yeah, the United States has more bankruptcies per capita because of healthcare in the entire world. So don't you be talking about us maybe having to wait a month or two for a knee replacement. If we're so small and so dependent and so devastatingly about to be crushed by tariffs, why does Washington spend every week demanding we become the 51st state? You don't beg to annex a country that you think is worthless. You beg to annex a country that you know you need.
Right, and the contradiction there is the whole tell. You cannot say that Canada is nothing without you, and then in the next breath, say you can't afford to let us stay independent. Midwest refineries run 70% Canadian crude. Your farmers need our potash, your housing market needs our lumber, and Maine just watched 20% of its Canada trade vanish. Duffy calls that leverage devastating for Canada. The market calls it mutually assured, and one side just proved it can walk away.
Listen, the Trump regime's biggest problem is that they refuse to do any math.
Yes, the U.S., it sees 1/10 of their GDP and assumes that Canada will eventually just say, yeah, sure, if the tariff gets big enough, we'll bend. But listen, that only works if the only thing that matters here is the price tag.
Right. And any Canadian watching the news this year can see the trade. The U.S. is carrying $40 trillion in federal debt. That is like $3 billion a day, okay? The U.S. is carrying $40 trillion in federal debt. Just on interest, they are paying like $3 billion a day. The 10-year T-bill, it keeps pushing toward that 4.7% danger zone, and their own business press is reporting 75,000 factory jobs gone and car prices up 10% because of these tariffs. So that's the catalog that Trump is inviting us to join? Come on. Canadians took one look at that and we said, no, thank you.
We like what we already have here in Canada. Thank you very much. And it's not complicated. You go to see a doctor without a GoFundMe link in your bio. Your kid's food is not full of additives that Europe and Canada already ban. Your tuition bill does not follow you until you're 50. All of those aren't slogans. That is how we live up here in Canada. You don't hand that over for a promise that tariffs will go away if you hand over your sovereignty.
Look, Washington acts like every country has a buyout number. Slap a percentage on lumber, on dairy, on steel, and eventually they fold. Canadians, we do not price things that way. This is a country that builds roads in -40 in Winnipeg in the middle of winter. We drive 40 hours and still are in the same province. We keep the lights on for a neighbor 3 times the size. Guess who that is? That's the kind of place that learns to value durability over a discount. And durability, dude, is not for sale.
And here's the punchline that the Trump regime never ever talks about. The country he wants to annex keeps his lights on. The U.S. imports about 60% of its crude oil from Canada, and 99% of its natural gas imports come from us as well. Those Midwest refineries, as we said before, the ones that actually make gasoline for Michigan and Ohio, they run on 70% Canadian crude. Without that, they don't refine. They rust.
And Maine just reported trade with Canada is down 20% already. Their border senators, they're all panicking about midterms because grocery bills and gas bills are up. And Canada, hey, we're the easiest scapegoat that stopped being so easy. Canada's dollar-for-dollar retaliation is set for September 8th, and it's not a bluff. It's a mirror to the USA. You tax our steel, we tax your steel. You want a trade war? Well, we can do the math longer than you can do the politics because we have a safety net in this country.
And the bond market also knows it. While Washington's posting about the 51st state, the 10-year T-bill was flirting with the one-year highs because the world sees a country trying to fund tax cuts with tariff revenue that never ever arrives. Listen, that is not strength. That's a guy pawning his own tools to pay rent. Canada, meanwhile, well, we just greenlit the $70 billion Churchill Falls and Gulf Island corridor and locked in capital that is fleeing U.S. uncertainty. Does that sound like a country that wants to become a vassal state? I don't think so. That's a country that's building without you.
So, when Trump says that Canada wants the benefits without being a state, the answer is simple. We already have all the benefits that we want, and we kept them precisely by not becoming a state.
So the bottom line here is this. The 51st state threats all failed because they were never ever an offer. They were an extortion note wrapped in a flag. Carney, he saw it, he exposed it, the country backed him, and now Washington has to run midterms telling Michigan why trucks cost more, why energy costs more, and why the guy next door just stopped picking up the phone.
And that is the positive story here for Canada. Sovereignty is not a talking point in a trade annex. It's healthcare, it's food standards, it's French on a sign, and there's no American veto over who we trade with next. We proved this week that we will pay the price to keep it. And that's not being anti-American yet, even though Canadians are losing their patience. But that is being pro-Canadian. And you know what? The world noticed.
So we want to hear from you on this as well. Do you think Washington will drop the veto demand and come back to the table before September 8th? Or will they just ride these 50% tariffs straight into the midterm? And Michigan and Maine, well, they're going to feel the pain.
Let us know in the comments what you think, and while you're down there, check out the pinned comment and the description for all of our sources for our merch store. I am proud to be a nasty Canadian man. And our Substack, that's getting very spicy.
And don't forget to give this a like, a hype, and a share so other people can weigh in on this crazy world.
We gotta get the word out, man. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.